it's time to create the divisions which will be placed inside each of the subdivisions, if you will. Right now I can see that I have 5 major buttons up here, navigation buttons. I'm going to put each one of those into a separate division. Whenever I have divisions side by side, I must use the float property, and I will tell you that I think best practice is to always use float to the left, and I never or rarely use floating to the right. I float to the left, and with left margin adjustments, I can move things as far to the left as possible. I'll show you what I mean right now. I click to create a new division, or style actually. I'm going to call it an ID because there's only one of them. I'll put a pound sign right here, and I'm going to call it button 1. Now, whenever you name divisions, division and styles, I would recommend, lowercase letters, no spaces. So I call it button 1, and now I'm just guessing. For width, I'll say maybe 150, and for height, I'll say 50. And floating, all of these divisions will have to be floated to be side by side. And again, I rarely use float to the right. So I'm going to say float to the left. And that's about all I'm going to do for right now. Now, it's not going to work perfectly yet. We're going to have to make an adjustment or two. So where does this go? I insert this division where after the start of the header box, I want button 1. And there is button 1 right there. Now, obviously, that's not where I want it to be. So I'm going to get rid of these placeholder words. I'm going to get rid of these placeholder words for right now. And now I'll adjust it. I click on button 1, click the pencil tool, and to move it downward, I'll add a top margin. Now I don't want to add the same number all the way down the line here. So in the box category, I'll deselect the margin checkbox. And for top, I'm going to guess, and I'll say 20 pixels for a top margin. Now to see what that does, I click apply, and that moves it just about where I want it to be. Maybe it's a little too much, so I'll make it 18. There we go. Now I also want to move it over to the left, or I'm sorry, to the right. And to do that, I'll add a left margin. And here I'll say 20 pixels, and I click apply. And you can see that I got it just about where I want it to be, but I can see that my division is a little too large. So I'll change the width. I'm going to guess and say 135. I'll click apply to see what that does. That is just about right. I think I'll just keep it right there. Keep in mind that your divisions don't have to be absolutely perfectly on your matching your background tracing image. Okay, now I have one of those. It's looking great. The next thing I'll do, of course, I better save, file, save. Now the next thing I'll do is simply duplicate this button. So how do I do that? I simply click on it so that the whole thing is highlighted, right mouse click, and say duplicate. I'll call this button 2. Pound sign button 2. Now everything is exactly the way I want it, and where do I insert this guy? I insert him right after the tag. After button 1, I want button 2. And I'll click OK, and there it is. Obviously, I'll get rid of the placeholder text. And I have to move it over a little bit, so I click on button 2, click the pencil tool, and in this case, all I have to do is increase the left margin. I'll make it 40 pixels, click apply. No, I can go a little further. I'll make it 50 pixels. Click apply, and I'm basically done. Now, I would simply repeat this process. I'll duplicate button 2, and I'll create all of these divisions. When I'm done with all of that, I now need a division for my main banner here. Well, first I'll create a new division and I'll call it, I'll give it an ID. And I say new division, I really mean a new style, which will be attached to a division. And I'm going to call this main banner. I'll click OK. Now, because this banner is going to be placed underneath items that were floated, underneath divisions that are floated, when I get to the box category, I'm going to have to say clear everything that was floated to the left. Otherwise, Dreamweaver will try to place this division and squeeze it right in here and it won't work. All right, now the width I want it as wide as possible, and the height I'm going to guess, and I'm going to say 150. And that's all I need for right now. I'll click OK. And I'm going to insert it after the tag. I would insert it after this tag. Since I don't have this tag built just yet, I'll insert it after this tag. I hope that doesn't confuse you. So here I go. I insert it after the tag. And again, you would insert it after whatever division this is way over here. I hope you can see that. But I'm going to say, in this case, after button 2. You would have to say after button 5. And I'll say I want the main banner. And there's my main banner. Now, I need the main banner to be a little bit lower. And it's a quirky kind of a thing. But oddly enough, what you have to do sometimes is add a top margin to this division or a bottom margin to the division above it. In this case, I'm going to add a bottom margin to the division above it. I know that from experience. Now, you would probably add the bottom margin to button 5, but I don't have one of those yet, so I'll add it to button 2 for demonstration purposes. I click on button 2, click the pencil tool, and for bottom margin, I'm going to say 30 pixels. And if I click apply, you'll see what it does. It made it a little too low, so I'll say 20. And that made it, I think, pretty good. Maybe a little less than that. How about 15? I would say even less than that for me. How about 12? And that's about right. No, I think 15 is about right for me. I'm going to get rid of this placeholder text. And now what I'm going to do inside this banner, and how do I know that's the main banner? If I click on the edge, I can see it. I'm really going to create 2 divisions, one right here and one right here. So it does get a little bit involved, doesn't it? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create a new division. It's an ID, a pound sign, and I'll call this banner left. It's a good idea to use descriptive names so you can keep track of what you're doing, obviously. I'll click OK. It's going to be, because it's going to be one division here and one division here inside the banner division we just created, I'm going to have to float. I always use float to the left. For width, I'm guessing, and I'm going to say 700 pixels. And for height, I know that it's, I think, 150. That's all I need to know. I'll click OK, and I'll insert that division where after the start of main banner, I'm going to want to insert banner left. Here's my banner left, and it fits right in where I need it to be. Alrighty, cool. In this case, I'm going to leave the words in there for a while. And now I need a banner to go right next to it. Well, an easy way to do that is to take banner left. I click on it, I duplicate it, and I'll give it a logical name. I'm going to call it banner right. Notice there's 2 R's in that name. I'll click OK. It's already floated properly to the left, but I know it can't be 700 pixels wide. So I'm going to guess and say 150 pixels wide. I'll click OK, and I insert that after the tag. After what? After banner left, I want banner right. And there it is, and obviously I can make it a little bit wider. I could also move it over a little bit. How will I move over banner right? How do I move it more to the right? Just add, look here, I'll deselect margin. I'll just add a little bit of left margin to it, like about 20. And I've moved it over, and I can actually make this a little bit bigger. How about 170 for width? That's pretty darn close to what I want. I'll click OK. All right, let's save the page. Well, I hope you get the idea of how you set up divisions inside of divisions inside of divisions. I'm not worried about the actual appearance yet. I'm still using the trace image.